If you had to battle demon kings, powerful sorcerers, and girthy body parts, what would you do? You'll need to get revenge on the royalty that did horrible things to you and your family, and they will stop at nothing to kill anyone you know. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the Geralt Kingdom in Redo of the Healer. This kid is going to have horrible things done to him, and then do the same horrible things to everyone else for revenge. In a world full of heroes, kind-hearted Chiaro here has just discovered that he has been chosen by the universe to become a hero, known as a healer. He tells his stepsister, Anne, and they celebrate what he thinks will change his life. He quickly gets recruited by one of the local heroes and ruler of the land, Princess Flare. They take him to where she lives, Geralt Kingdom. Excited, he assumes he'll finally be able to save humanity from the horrors of this world, but that was his biggest and hardest mistake. Reaching the kingdom, he quickly finds out that Princess Flare and her people fail to see him as a useful member and don't even think of him as a human even, thinking his powers as a glorified medic are beneath them. They soon take advantage of him, drug him up, and make him heal them non-stop. But because of how his power works, he is forced to inherit their pain and suffering each time he uses it, soon driving him mad, and Flare's whole squad, Blade and Bullet mostly, starts squeezing him dry of all of his powers in the most nasty of ways possible. Chiaro quickly grows to hate Flare and her people, and his body gains resistance to the drugs because they constantly give it to him again and again and again. Finally coming back to his old senses, he quietly begins to wait for the perfect moment to take them out. But one day, Flare's crazy sister visiting, Norn, figures out that Chiaro isn't as weak anymore, and he's pretending to be. Getting discovered, he looks in shock and horror, but she agrees not to tell anyone if he acts like her good little boy for the night. A few months later, Flare's team engages in a battle with the Demon Lord, but Flare and her heroes use up all their energy fighting and yell for Chiaro to heal them quickly, but he turns on them and finally begins his plan for revenge. Ignoring their requests, their pleas for help, he attacks the now weakened Demon Lord and quickly defeats her. But that's when he realizes that the Demon Lord isn't as evil as Flare said she was, and finds out that she was trying to protect something from getting harmed. Acquiring her abilities in battle, he also gains her heart, the Philosopher's Stone. Suddenly, with all this power, he becomes the most powerful healer in the world. Princess Flare begs him to heal them now that he's finally not a puss boy. But then he tells her that because of what she did to him, he will now use his new powers to rewind time and to go back to when this journey started to take advantage of her and all of her team. Flare screams in horror as Chiaro commits his spell, going back in time, rewinding everything back to 4 years into the past. Suddenly, he wakes up back in his bed in his hometown, but he has no memory of what just happened. He then starts hearing strange voices in his head and heads out to do errands, but the voices in his head start getting louder and louder, directing him to this forest. And that's when this lady Star Spirit bursts from the water, telling him he may ask her one wish, and he tells her that he wants to receive the sight of the spirit that sees all. And for some reason, she grants it to him, granting him the power to see all things in the universe, which is very handy. Like, for example, someone's power levels and abilities, aka stats. And acquiring this new power, he also regains his horrifying memories of what he just went through and realized that he just reset his time loop. And he gave himself a new mission to get revenge and take out Princess Flare and her team in the most horrifying way possible. Okay, well, it might seem like we have the upper hand. The rules of time travel are too complicated for mere mortals to pay attention to. But if I was Chiaro, I would bypass 3 major mathematical time travel theories that would allow us to take out the risk or reduce it to very little. Now, online criticism of what just happened aside, Chiaro here, we know, has the most insane opportunity to prevent all of that shit from happening to him again. But because his plan involves time travel, it means that we need to be careful that we carry out plans due to tons of time traveling rules and paradoxes. Here's why. Technically, time travel doesn't exist, as it violates the second law of thermodynamics, which basically means you cannot unscramble an egg. Order will always return into chaos at some point, and this rule applies to literally everything in the universe. You can't fix a broken mirror exactly how it was before, and you can't go back to looking or feeling like you are 20 years ago when you're 90. Traveling into the past means, especially if you include the biggest paradox that prevents time travel, known as the grandfather paradox, where changing stuff in the past could prevent stuff like you from being born, aka the butterfly effect, and this would prevent you from traveling to the past in the first place. However, even if we could, some say it is possible. This would cause us in the past to create a new second timeline, known as the multiverse theory, but this still wouldn't help us anyways, as events that didn't happen in the original timeline would have happened happen in this one. And this makes predicting the future in this timeline impossible. So in order to help myself out the most, we're going to do one thing that we can do to make sure our plan works and doesn't violate any of the most common time travel laws. Now listen, whatever plan I'm going to have if I was him, I would make sure that we don't pull the trigger on killing any of the Dural Kingdom's main bad guys. A safer bet would be to ask someone else to do the killing of our targets, since this is one way to avoid the paradox that would not go against the theory of relativity. We won't be breaking any time travel rules and still will get the job done. A few days later, just like in the last time loop, he soon gets chosen by the universe to become a hero and knows that Flare has sensed this and will soon pay his town a visit. In preparation, he quickly starts eating poisonous fruits and berries of all kinds, and he builds up a resistance to poison way faster in order for what's about to happen next. Over the next few days, everything happens like it did in the past. He finally reaches Dural Kingdom, but this time, Kiaro starts watching Flare, and his kind heart wants to know if she really is evil in this time loop as well, because she hasn't done anything wrong yet. Using his eye powers, he knows he isn't powerful enough to take his revenge anytime soon, so he decides to let history repeat itself for a bit and goes through all the horrifying things that he went through all over again. And one day, he gets called to heal one of the kingdom's warriors, this kind-hearted girl named Korea. Realizing that this part of the time loop wasn't in the last one, he cautiously uses his powers on her, healing her entire arm from scratch, and he quickly pretends to pass out, so no one believes he's actually powerful. Seeing this, Princess Flare approaches him and gets pissed off. She tells the men to lock Kiaro up and force him to become a stronger healer even if it harms or hurts him. Hearing this, Kiaro realizes that she is the same evil woman in this time loop like she was in the last one, and that flips the switch. And then he gets ready to start his plans to destroy her. Over the next few days, Kiaro continues to pretend to be a good little boy and complains that healing people affects his sanity, doing exactly what he did before, getting drugged up and imprisoned, while hundreds of heroes come to steal his powers every day in the most horrifying anime way possible. But this time, thanks to the powers of the Philosopher's Stone from the last time loop, Kiaro has a reverse Uno healing spell on him, and he secretly begins to absorb their powers and become more and more powerful each time he gets used. 6 months later, the resistance to his drug finally wears off, and he overhears from the outside guards that the powerful king of the land has left the kingdom to go on tour. Using this chance, he escapes his cage and begins his plans. A little while later, one of the soldiers named Renard here captures Kiaro and tells Princess Flare that he has some urgent confidential news about Kiaro that he must discuss with her. She tells him to lock him up and come to her room. Walking inside, he quickly kills Flare's bodyguards and uses a sword technique and captures her, revealing that he is actually Kiaro in disguise and that the fake Kiaro she saw earlier was actually Bernard. With his enhanced powers, he absorbs all of Flare's magic, making her helpless, and she begs for her life, but he ignores it and proceeds to do all sorts of the worst things that she did to him, and then some. And after he's done, he uses magic to change everything about her and erases her memory of who she was, renaming her Freya. And with the kingdom burning down, he magically changes one of the dead bodyguards into Princess Flare and quickly frames Renard for the murder of the royal princess. Taking her from the castle the next day, Flare, now Freya, wakes up with no memory of who she is, and Kiaro implants more fake memories into her, saying that they are a couple in love and that she lives to serve him, turning her into his little lapdog. But unfortunately, with heat on his tail, Kiaro soon decides to leave the kingdom with Freya, but soon overhears the villagers talking about his real mortal enemy, Flare's sister Norn. She will soon return to the capital and get to the bottom of her sister's murder, and Kiaro realizes that taking her out one day will be his biggest challenge. A few days later, they arrive at the town of La Rarita, but Kiaro notices that a disease has started making everyone sick. Using his eye powers, he discovers that the water that everyone is drinking is poisonous, and that their water source was contaminated by monster carcasses. Needing more money for his revenge mission, he comes up with a plan and quickly makes a cure for the town's sickness, using his healing magic and his blood. Soon he meets up with a merchant and manages to cut a deal with him, delivering batches of medicine every few days for a ton of cash under the table, of course, all the while keeping his identity a secret in this town. But now that he has extra funds with him, he and Freya head to the servant shop to pick up a new edition. Seeing all of the wonderful products, he then changes his mind and tells the shopkeeper he's looking for a more durable item that will suit his lifestyle for cheap, and he heads down into the storage basement. And he sees all the crappy editions and they're not impressive, and he spots this low-tech product named Setsuna. But because of his eye powers, he can tell that she is weak from the town's poison water she's been drinking, but has the potential to become a lethal killer and the perfect assassin. He chats her up and tells her that she has been betrayed by someone who took her kind and made them into servants, and now she wants revenge on him, just like him. So he buys her and takes her home, where he takes a closer look into her memories and sees that she wants revenge against the same kingdom that he escaped from, Dural Kingdom. Kiro quickly takes a liking to Setsuna and thinks that unlike Freya, she is a good person. He then proposes to make a deal with her, saying that he'll make her stronger with his insane powers so she can take revenge if she becomes his servant for life, and she accepts his deal. He then celebrates with her with a life revitalization class to help her make her stronger. He then helps her get revenge. That night, they track to where the remaining members of her clan are and comes across them battling soldiers from the Dural Kingdom. Kiro then puts on a mask and pretends to be the famous warrior he helped once before, Kureha Claret. He then announces to the Ice Wolf clan that Setsuna is alive and he's here to stop the kingdom from doing bad things, and they engage in warfare. Using Freya's magic, the three go off and brutally take out this party of human soldiers with ease, coating the dirty battlefield around them with blood. He finally allows Setsuna to try out her new power level, and she rips claws and goes berserk on all of these guys. It's beautiful. But Kiro notices that Freya, with her old memories erased, now has none of the evilness that her old identity, Flare, had, and wonders if Dural Kingdom made her this way, just as him and the Ice Wolf clan win the battle. What can and cannot trust. Okay, while this may look impressive, how Kiro did this whole thing was dumb, and he just compromised his identity. Setsuna here is the only one whose motives make sense. Her people, known as the Ice Wolf race, basically got kicked out of their lands and got turned into servants, and it makes sense why she would want to destroy them. However, what they just did now was dumb as hell and totally unnecessary. Kiro pretending to be somebody from the Dural Kingdom means that he essentially offered them more info to figure out his true identity. Dressing up as somebody from that kingdom was pretty stupid, as this would have allowed his enemies to begin tracking down who Kureha knew and who she crossed paths with this whole time. And I don't want to even know about how dumb it was to use Kureha's special technique that only a few people know how to use. If I was him, aside from keeping a low profile during battle, instead of announcing anything, I would have used less impressive magical displays, and have charged in from the front while directing Freya and Setsuna on opposite ends, hitting left and right side of the armies in a sort of pincer movement. Taking the troops out without too much display of our powers would have also made sure that no eyewitness account would have been able to tell what type of powers we used during battle. Like, honestly, this is a less is more situation. Don't give a whole freaking kingdom more information on how to figure out who you are. He was thinking like a narcissistic peacock wanting to show off instead of being like an actual man with a plan. Meanwhile, back in Dural Kingdom, Flare's far more dangerous sister Norn has finally returned to investigate her sister's murder, but she doesn't believe Bernard is the murderer and thinks it was actually Kiaru. She convinces the king to give Bernard one more chance to prove himself by going after and hunting down Kiaru himself. Nearby, one of the only good heroes around, Kureha, overhears some people talking about their army. This man says they were wiped out by someone using the same sword technique as her, which is impossible. Back in Kiaru's location, him and his team head back to the town they are camping at and decide it's time to move out. They head to the merchant selling his potion to collect their final payment, but he screws them over, saying he wants the full recipe or else. Still wanting to keep a low profile, he agrees to selling him the formula, writing down a fake recipe in exchange for 500 gold coins, as him and his team get out of there. But that's when he gets attacked by Kureha, and Kiro almost isn't prepared. Alert, she tells him that she's tracked him down to find out who he is, because only her family knows how to use the sword technique that he's been using. He tells her he's a nobody, but she doesn't believe him and says he killed her men last night when they were just trying to protect the Ice Wolf village. But Setsuna here calls BS on that, tells her that her men were actually trying to attack the village and turn her people into servants. Kiaru actually saved them. Kureha doesn't believe a word she says and attacks him. Using his magic eye, he spots Kureha's weakness and leaves an opening in combat on purpose. She spots this and quickly cuts Kiaru's hand clean off, revealing her left side defenseless. Kiaru, quickly healing his arm, takes advantage and grabs her exposed face and forces her to see all of the horrors her kingdom has done, and she passes out. Later, she wakes up and is shocked to find out the truth. They tell her that Dural Kingdom isn't protecting demi-humans like Setsuna, but is actually taking advantage of people like her, and Kiro finally reveals himself as the one who healed her arm way back in the kingdom when he was still a little boy, and he secretly tells Freya to pretend to be Princess Flare, even though she is but has no memory of it, and he quickly implants her with even more fake memories, and she enters and tells Kureha that Kiaru saved her life after they tried to expose Dural Kingdom. Bernard found them out and imprisoned Kiaru, who tried to silence her. This is why she faked her own death and left with him. And so by mixing a cocktail of lies and some truth, Freya does exactly as Kiaru wants and makes Kureha think that they are actually the good guys, even though they are, and they're also sort of evil, and I'm so here for it. She's shocked and convinced by Flare's surprise, and she agrees to join forces with him, and even agrees to be a part of Kiaru's hero roster, if you know what I mean. The next day, troops from Dural Kingdom finally show up to this town, and Kiaru discovers that they're holding people from his village hostage. They know that he's behind this, but Kiaru realizes that they're looking for his old identity, and means that he still has the element of surprise. Okay, now Now, I don't know about you all, this may come across as a shock. Geralt Kingdom suddenly springing on Kiaro with his villagers could have been predicted if we looked at the past events, and it all started back when Kiaro messed up during that ice battle scene. Not only did he give the enemy more ways to identify himself, but he also failed to take into account the one thing that was his biggest weakness, his family. He rushed to save them. He should have just stayed low, let his family die. Because if he's truly all about revenge, he shouldn't have tried to save anybody. This was a moment of weakness. He should have been even more ruthless. He should just let those villagers die right now. Because once the Geralt Kingdom receives word that he basically allowed all of his family and his town to die, they'd be even more terrified of him. They would know that he wouldn't let nothing get in his way of revenge. In short, this kid should have just committed to becoming a full-on bad guy already, because up until now, he's been only going halfway on things, and I hate quitters. He quickly sends Curia to find out more information about the situation, and she reports back that the Geralt Kingdom attacked his town because of him. He decides to get more information about himself, and changes his face into a stranger. Going out, he spots his beloved stepsister Anne, and he changes his identity into a Geralt soldier and spots Renard, but finds out from his memories that he found Anne and did despicable things to her against her will, breaking Kiara's mind a little bit more and pissed off. He changes back into his old identity and kidnaps Renard and uses his powers. He turns Renard into a chick and reveals to him that he's brainwashed all of his troops nearby into forgetting who they are and don't know that he is Renard in a girl's body. And he lets his men have their way with him. Tracking Anne down, he soon finds her and rushes to her aid and tries to heal her with all his powers, but she dies in his arms. And the shock from this breaks Kiaro's mind a little more. Later, he gets informed from Curia that her kingdom is planning to execute his townspeople at this stadium. They're trying to lure him out. He gets a rundown of the area. 2 entryways, heavy metal doors, and 2 specialized barriers, designed to absorb any magical powers or abilities within the area. It's a suicide mission, but Kiaro doesn't care, and the next day he shows up ready to save people and changes his identity back to his old face. Unveiling himself to the world, the troops start killing the villagers, but Kiaro doesn't stop approaching them, telling them that their deaths are on their hands. And the leader gets nervous, and the troops around him think Kiaro has officially gone mad. Desperate, they activate the defense barrier on the stadium and think they've disabled Kiaro's power, and the leader says that they're all wearing crystals that keep them from getting affected. But that's when all the troops around him start collapsing, and Kiaro smiles and reveals that he knew about this and engineered the barrier with his magic only to affect anyone wearing the stone necklaces that they're wearing. Quickly taking it off, the troops tell Kiaro that he's still trapped and outnumbered, but he tells them that he's a beast in a cage and they are trapped with him, making these soldiers think that Kiaro has officially lost his mind. Okay, everyone here is gonna be totally screwed, and I love it. Kiaro's insanity, though, could be easily explained with something that I like to call discontinuity theory. Kiaro has, I guess you could say, gone batshit crazy. And the thing is, just about any person can slip into madness and contract over 200 forms of mental illness. I know I have a few of those. However, Kiaro acting like he did do show signs that he has developed bipolar disorder. And while this disorder is more commonly inherited, it can be acquired through other ways. Because as we've clearly seen, he's got that dog in him. And this illness, you could say, can cause hypersexuality during a manic episode, because he can seemingly switch into a psycho on the flit. But due to seeing his Anne die, this definitely sent him over the edge and officially broke him. Full-on insanity can be triggered by specific events that cause someone extreme stress. Because while things may seem tough now, Kiaro started off as a naive kid wanting to do good and had no idea about what was really going on, meaning his foundational psyche was fragile, and this sudden shift in someone's psychological profile can happen due to what is known as discontinuity theory. That is when someone perceives a violation in some domain of their life, vital to their sense of self-esteem. Like for example, a straight A student suddenly gets bad grades, and then he subconsciously searches for ways to rationalize this reason. Like for example, developing sexual or eating problems. This is likely what happened to Kiaro just now, after the traumatic experience he went through, plus the stress of committing revenge with no one else to talk to about it, and then finally seeing the only person he knew and loved die because of him. It makes him break down and shift into a full-blown monster. That's when he notices the surviving villagers start violently dying, forcing him to realize that they planned to kill them all along. The leader tells Kiaro that he knew nothing about this part of the plan, making him realize that this was likely all of Norn's evil plans. About to fight, a giant hologram appears in the sky around the stadium of Princess Flare. The citizen sees she's alive, and she reveals the war crimes that the Geralt Kingdom has committed. And this is the reason that she faked her own death in order for Kiaro to help her to escape. The soldiers think she is an imposter, but then she starts singing, using her powers to activate activate level 6 magic fixed star. Disabling the stadium shield, she puts on an impressive display of magic, proving she is not an imposter. And this convinces the townsfolk that them and Kiaru are good, and that Geralt Kingdom is bad. They rise up and go against the kingdom, lighting the fuse on this rebellion. And everyone quickly starts turning on these troops, while Kiaru escapes. After, he tells Kuria that him and his team are leaving the city, but she tells him to be careful, because Geralt Kingdom is planning a wide-scale expedition to the city of Bronica, which will happen soon, making him realize that in the first time loop, there was no expedition, which means history is changing, and he now doesn't know what the future will look like. Kuria describes to him that this new city is dangerous and full of demons living with humans, but Kiaru tells her that he wants to go see a woman there who will soon become the future Demon King, the one from the first time loop. Kuria wishes him good luck and agrees to continue gathering information for him while he prepares to find his enemy's blade and bullet. On the way to meet the future Demon King, Kiaru then creates a makeshift staff to hold Freya's magic, using a special divine ornament spell. He wonders if he can get a hold of a gemstone, what kind of weapon it will become. The next day, they reach the city of Bronica and enter this pub full of drunks. Sitting down, he bumps into the Demon King, who's younger and looks different. And Kiaru realizes that she isn't the Demon King yet, but has insane potential. They chat and he finds out that she is from a race named the Blackwing Tribe, and is just a low-level demon. These two drunk guys then chime in and say that the current Demon King has put a bounty on her people in order to get rid of their race. They warn Kiaru that as an outsider, he should be careful talking to her, because if anyone from the Demon King's squad shows up here, she is dead. Knowing he could use her for part of his plan, he warns her that she must defend against an incoming attack or else she'll die. And that's when a huge blast blows through the bar, killing these two drunk guys. But Kiaru notices how easily this girl defended herself. While powerful, he realizes that she lacks experience, and he quickly informs her that based on the pattern attack just now, he thinks all of this was planned and is actually a diversion. She tells him to leave her alone, and that's when she gets hit with a sleeping potion. Now helpless, Kiaru tells her to hire him to protect her if she promises to pay him back when she moves up in the world. With nothing to lose, or so she thinks, she accepts his deal, unleashing the powers of the world's greatest healer, quickly making more blood spill out and through these tavern halls. He then rescues the future Demon King and they all escape. Later, this girl wakes up and Kiaru reveals his true goal. He shows her his special eye power and says they already met in the future. 4 years from now when she becomes the Demon King. She thinks he's joking, but then he reveals that he is the hero of recovery, instantly alerting her, and Kiaru tells her that he knows her real name is Eve Reese of the Blackwing Tribe. Using his eye powers, he shows off that he knows her full power stats, and tells her that he thinks her powers are necessary in order for humans and demons to coexist in the future, and he wants to protect her until she becomes the next Demon King, because she lacks in a bunch of skills right now. He tries to empathize with his future victim, and says he knows that most of her tribe is dead, and wants to help her get revenge. He wants the heart of the current Demon King, and can help her train soon to fight him. Confused, she agrees to think about his offer. Later, Kiaru tells her the full game plan, to improve her powers and to help her save the remaining people of her tribe, while he gets the current Demon King's heart, and then she can finally end the war between the demons and humans, a war created by the Geralt Kingdom in order to make a profit. Agreeing, they begin their training plan, and then he finds out what her powers are, and what she can control. And he discovers that she has the ability to control a godlike creature, known as the Divine Bird of Fatal Diseases. Kiaru basically drools at the mouth and wants that power desperately, telling her that they should go see this bird now. Eve warns him it's dangerous, and says he must undertake many trials, but he tells her it's okay because he's hot shit. He then leaves the girls behind, changing his identity, and heads out. Later, he spots a member of the group that tried to kill Eve earlier, but quickly defeats him, letting him go so he can track his location later. Heading back, he informs the girls what just happened and his new plan for them to attack their camp later tonight, because he needs to know how many more people know Eve is here. But wanting to have some more fun before they attack, the girls take off their clothes and Kiaru joins in, and Eve gets uncomfortable and Kiaru says she can step out for a moment if she wants. She runs out, but still hears the moans inside and starts to get excited, not knowing that all of this is a part of Kiaru's cheeky plans. That night, Setsuna tracks the demons to their camp, and Kiaru sets up his plan, taking this liquid concentrate of aphrodisiac. He throws some of it on the demon's sleeping pet here, waking it up as it gets too excited and begins charging at all the demons, distracting them enough so Kiaru and Setsuna can easily take them out. Tying up these two survivors, he interrogates them and asks asks if their group is the only one that knows about Eve. They claim they are, but Kiaru doesn't trust them and leaves them down here with this excited bull. Heading back, they change hotels to be safe, but Eve asks if she can stay in a separate room. Kiaru tells her that they should all stick together to be extra safe. The next day, Kiaru buys Freya's staff and fills it with some of his magic, but finds out that its energy absorption is blocked. He fixes it and unlocks its full potential. The merchant here sees this and gets impressed, and Kiaru then makes a deal with him, fixing some of his other weapons to get their weapons, including a mithril sword, for free. And that's when they hear an announcement in the distance, and the town citizens wonder what's going on. Concerned, he tells Freya to quickly head back up to the hotel while he goes to check it out. And that's when he sees that his time is nearly up. Norn, entering the city with all of her troops, he scans their power levels and knows that he won't be able to defeat them easily. And that's when he spots one of his mortal enemies, Blade. Kiaru then spots another enemy, Hawkeye, one of the Braves, and almost gets discovered by him, forcing him to leave and plan his attack. The next day, he becomes friends with the merchant from earlier, and he makes a business deal with him to sell him more of his magic potions. But he finds out that last night he spotted Blade doing something horrible to one of the local girls and warns him that they need to watch themselves. This gives Kiaru a messed up idea. Heading back, he changes his identity to a girl and asks these two to dress him up, giving himself a new name, Kiara. Preparing himself, he then heads down to the local bar that Blade was spotted at yesterday and waits for her to arrive. Soon enough, she enters and spots Kiara. Approaching her, Blade tells her that she's looking for a new girl. Kiara plays hard to get and says no, but Blade plants a big fatty and transfers a sleeping potion from her lips to Kiara, making her pass out. Going according to plan, Blade takes her down this alleyway, and that's when this stranger tries to attack Blade. He claims he's the father of the girl that she did horrible things to last night, but Kiara reflexively knocks him out and accidentally reveals to Blade that she isn't an ordinary girl. She takes out her sacred sword and reveals how strong she really is. Kiara tries to hit her, but Blade grabs her forcibly and knocks her out. A little later, Kiara wakes up tied, and Blade asks if she is an assassin, and randomly says she hates all men, and warns Kiara that she will destroy her as punishment, but quickly discovers that Kiara is a dude by, well, you know how, and is shocked, and she falls to the floor and almost pukes, saying she can't believe she just touched a manly man. Distracted, Kiara uses this moment to break out of her rope and cuts her with a poison blade, slowing her down. She tries to reach for her Ragnarok blade but gets pinned, and Kiara reveals that she is Kiaru and says that Blade just did things to a dude, and she freaks out before passing out. Later, she wakes up, and Kiara finds out from her that Norn is planning something evil with this village. He realizes that she can't move her legs, and Kiara reveals some of her men have been brainwashed into his servants. He says he will do the same things she did to him, saying these men have now been possessed by hunger and horny magic, and they will try to eat her unless she can satisfy them the other way until morning. If she manages to live, Kiara will set her free, but she doesn't, and surprise, dies in 10 seconds. With her death, her hero weapon Ragnarok turns into a plain gem with Blade down. Kiara sets his sight on Norn, and eventually Bullet. The next day, Kiara pays a visit to his friend Carmen, but sees Hawkeye also visiting, trying to buy some potions. He can't tell who Kiara really is, and they make small talk, with him leaving, and Kiara realizes that he'll have to take him out first before he gets to Norn. Later, Kiara converts the plain gem he took from Blade and turns it into his new desired hero weapon. Wishing for immortality, he receives a new weapon, the sacred armor glove known as Georgius. Excited with his new power, he gives another life revitalization class to most of his team. The next day, Norn announces to the citizens of Bronica why they're really here. They have come to free the humans from the control of the demons. The citizens get angry and tell her that they were forced to make peace with them years ago when Geralt Kingdom abandoned them. Getting pissed off, one human tries to attack Norn but gets killed by Hawkeye, and Norn then uses this as an excuse and tells everyone that the demons have now begun brainwashing humans, and it is up to them to kill the demons and the brainwashed humans. Okay, well, this situation looks horrifying. In reality, the villagers should have been able to escape all of this and get everything they wanted if they just targeted Norn's feelings of feeling less than her sister. Let me explain. Norn here is the most sadistic leader in the land, and for good reasons. Unlike her younger sibling Flair, she is what happens if someone grows up in the shadow of their siblings. Because of this, she exhibits cold, calculating, sadistic, and merciless tendencies towards enemies, and has no problem playing dirty. Being even more sadistic, it was obvious that the protest clash that she just caused now was a classic example of government instigation. In In a way, this is similar to the actual roles that governments around the world have been using for centuries, known as an agent provocateur, and using these agents in order to manipulate crowds of people. And because of this, if I was one of the citizens, I would have recognized this from the start based on what Norn was saying. A kingdom known for ruling over people with an iron fist means that from the get-go they were looking for an excuse to use violence against this town to prove a point, and this should have been expected, even before the reason Norn gave to start killing off people, known that Norn had a reputation for being a psycho. We should have approached this situation more calmly. I would have begun distributing small slips of paper with notes and instructions to everyone, telling the villagers reading it to verbally say what was written on them out loud. Like, Norn wasn't as talented as her sister, and Norn doesn't have the guts to let this town flourish in peace unlike Flair, basically verbalizing to Norn that her sister is much more talented. It's noted that Norn overcompensates in her actions to make people fear her. By allowing the mob to destroy her sense of self-identity and shattering her ego through peaceful means, we would have been able to convince her to leave us by embarrassing her and causing her to leave without giving her and her men a reason to start fighting, because it was obvious from the get-go that they were there looking to start something. The soldiers start slaughtering all of the innocent citizens, while Kiaro watches in the distance, but then sees his new close friend Carmen get killed as well. Pissed off, he activates his weapon and begins slaughtering the bad guys with ease, and he heads straight for Norn. And that's when an image of a Princess Flair appears in the sky and tells all the Dural soldiers to stop fighting and leave the city immediately. This confuses Norn and Hawkeye watching from their castle. Giving Kiaro enough time to Hawkeye reacts with superhuman speed and puts up a good fight, but Kiaro easily defeats him with his now overpowered godlike powers, and at this point, he's so strong it doesn't even make sense. He approaches Norn and she realizes who Kiaro really is. A little later, she wakes up tied up, and Kiaro blames her for everything and tells her he'll let her go free if she wins this new game. He brings in Flair, now hypnotized into a puppy, and tells her that if Norn can resist not getting excited by her sister until morning, he'll let her go. But of course, she loses in 10 seconds, and Kiaro then erases her memory and becomes his servant. The next day, Kuria pays him a visit, saying she was worried about him, but he tells her that all is good and introduces her to his long-lost family friend here, who is really Norn. He then puts a big fatty on Kuria, and they all participate in another life revitalization class, while Eve watches from the bleachers. A little while later, Kiaro tells everyone that his closest enemies defeated, their missions is still not over. They will now head out to help Eve capture the divine bird of fatal diseases in order to stop the current Demon King, and in order for Kiaro to obtain the Philosopher's Stone and become the most powerful healer in the world. He then says goodbye to his 10-second best friend Carmen from 6 feet under. Meanwhile, the ruler of the Dural Kingdom orders Kiaro's mortal enemy Bullet to go and stop him, making Bullet excited to finally meet his baby boy again. And Kiaro realizes that he will never get peace, and no power or pleasure he gets will ever make him truly happy until he finally gets his revenge on Bullet someday. Because revenge is the only thing in life that matters. But what do you guys think about the video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a thumbs up down below. And as always, don't forget to check out our How to Be playlist.